Hi, and welcome. Welcome. My name is Rachel Chambers, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Painted Brain. And welcome to our first annual Minority Mental Health Month event, one day at a time. I'm so honored to have you all here and amongst a distinguished guest and honored panelist. And I just want to say and give you a little information about Painted Brain. Painted Brain is a hybrid nonprofit that integrates technology, art, and mental health to support individuals with mental health challenges, to provide them with jobs, and also to support people with criminal backgrounds, and also to provide them with meaningful opportunities. Painted Brain believes that access is equity, and access to events such as this, such as conversations, technology, to wellness, to care, is our priority. So I thank you for chiming in and listening to these discussions. And now I would like to turn it over to Karis Myrick, who is the Deputy Chief of Peer and Allied Health Professions with the Department of Mental Health. And she will be discussing some of the history of Minority Mental Health Month. And thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. And thank you, Painted Brain. Such a phenomenal event that you all put together, and the artwork. Can I buy some? I want some in my house. It was amazing. But let me start off by talking about the importance of Minority Mental Health Month, which by an act of Congress in 2007 by Albert Wynn in Maryland, it's HR 134, actually had a congressional resolution naming July Bebe Moore Campbell Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. So who the heck is Bebe Moore Campbell, and why is there a congressional resolution? There is not anything like this for any other month that recognizes the importance of health and mental health for Black and Brown and other folks, people of color. But there is one for us because of a Los Angelino woman named Bebe Moore Campbell. She's a prolific writer. She wrote a book called 72 Hour Hold. She wrote another book, When Mommy Gets Angry, but about her experiences trying to navigate the mental health system and not being able to do it as a Black woman. So she wrote these stories. They were incredible stories. She advocated on behalf of Black and Brown and other folks who could not access mental health care that was culturally and linguistically relevant for them. She's just an amazing person. I got to hear her read 72 Hour Hold with my parents. I am a person with a lived experience of a mental health condition. I asked my parents to come out to California. I was on disability. We got to hear her read from the book. My mother's name, who is Bebe, was so moved, and so was my dad, to finally understand what it was that I was going through. And then I, in turn, was able to understand what my parents were going through as a Black family, why we don't talk openly about it, why we kind of struggle with it, why sometimes it's hard for us to find things that really work for us. So, I hold a lot up for Miss Campbell. She did pass away in 2006 from brain cancer, but her legacy lives on in the recognition of Bebe Moore Campbell National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. It's a lot to say, but it's important to say we wrote an article in Stat News. Say her name, know her name, Bebe Moore Campbell. She is Black Girl Magic and part of our history that we want to keep alive. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to you, Rochelle.
Yeah, and I'd like to introduce our amazing moderator for today, our journalism intern, Savannah Thomas, who will be moderating the distinguished panel. And I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate folks for chiming in on these conversations about Black wellness and the importance of having cultural specific conversations. And with that, please take it over, Savannah.
Yes, thank you for that warm welcome, Rachel. Like she said, my name is Savannah Thomas, and I will be your moderator for this evening. We're going to cover a lot of ground, kind of big topics we're trying to conquer. So aim of this panel is to get out a lot of information and then as well as offer some solutions on how to deal with difficult discussions. So today we'll be discussing two topics, social unrest and being Black in LA, as well as COVID-19 work and lifestyle changes. So Before we go any further, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists for this evening. First off, I'd like to welcome Dr. Alan Lipscomb, Assistant Professor at CSUN, a practitioner, scholar, and researcher of Black male grief and complex trauma, as well as Dr. Wendy Ashley, also a CSUN Professor, Psychotherapist, educator, researcher, and trainer. We've got Drew Love, an Island Def Jam recording artist, lead vocalist of the musical act Day, and recording artist. Nakeya Fields, a licensed clinical social worker and owner of Feel Empowerment, excuse me. And Theo Henderson, host and creator of the podcast Media Unhoused. So over the duration of this hour-long discussion, we're going to ask them a ton of questions, kind of pry into what are some solutions to some of the most difficult problems we're facing. And if you as attendees, you have any questions, feel free to comment them in the Q&A box, and we will be getting to them in a latter portion of the webinar. So to start off, I'd like to ask everyone on the panel, I want to get your opinion on this. In your experience, what is it like to be Black in LA during this time of social unrest?
I think to be Black in the city of Los Angeles during, especially this time of social unrest, is really interesting because I didn't really want for much. So they always made sure that they took care of me, and I didn't really experience too much of that. But being in Los Angeles on my own now, being grown in my mid-20s, during the time of social unrest like this, I can bring up an example. Actually, just this past couple weeks ago, I was actually talking to Rashawn, and I was walking my dog just outside because I've been kind of active during this time. I've been out during the protests on the front lines and being part of a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement in Los Angeles. But I was walking my dog, and this cop was just kind of reason it wasn't stopping me. He didn't put his lights on, but for like a whole half a mile to a mile, he was just slowly following behind me in his cop car and squad car, and I didn't really know why, but I had this feeling of fear just because I had seen so much the stuff that was going on. It was broad daylight, but I was stricken with fear for some reason, and eventually after like that half mile, the cop kind of turned off and went somewhere else. But it's an eerie feeling because you think that inherently you should be equal with everyone else, right? Like, say I might have a different skin color, but you know, I'm just as qualified as everybody else. I'm not a threat to society. I know that I'm a good individual, but for some reason we're perceived almost like as a threat, or we're perceived as people that are going against the system or whatever. So it's a scary feeling, but it's also empowering to me because I feel like I see this as a time for us to speak out and to show what we really have intrinsically as Black people. We're leaders, you know what I mean? And this is a time for us to speak up and really fight for our right as Black Americans. So it's scary, but it's also empowering.
Dr. Lipscomb, could you add on to that? What has your experience been like? Something similar, or can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think definitely what Drew was just touching on. I think right now it is overwhelming. It's heavy. There's a heaviness. There are times where it feels lighter, but there is this overarching weight that's on you or on me that I'm feeling during this time.
And then Theo, could you talk a little bit about your experience?
Thank you for having me. Before I begin into my experiences on it, I can say for my own experience as being an unhoused and African American male, it can have a little bit more complexity as well as a little more intersection. For example, I have some health issues, and I had injured my leg, and I was on a walker and being able to navigate during when shelter in place took place. So that's also been to a very traumatic time because everything just shut down. The basic needs, like for people that are unhoused, like the simple thing of trying to go to the restroom is almost a 2-hour ordeal. Add on to that is because our usual interaction is being unhoused, and particularly Black men are 8 times as likely to be accosted than white unhoused men by the police. That makes it a little bit more, even more stressful. So I had to go to Union Station to try to find a way to use the restroom. And they barred my entry, I think the second or third day, because you had to be a essential worker. So to be someone that's unhoused and Black and seeing a lot of the protests or Black Lives Matter is it's twofold to me. I was talking to one of my friends, and I was telling her that, did you know that before George Floyd, that Neho was the first person was a unhoused person by Mussolina.
But Ms. Nakeya Fields, could you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Sure, I would love to. You know, I am multiracial, so I like to speak as that. I am almost completely half, a little bit more Black. I found out with my ancestry DNA. Before that advent, I had no idea. I just went around saying I'm mixed. But it turns out that I'm Nigerian and British, and that was something to me that I had no idea I was Nigerian, and a part of my Black identity has fusion. I think it wasn't until I became a Black mother that I realized how much privilege I had in the world as this multiracial person who people actually mostly think I'm Indian or Latina. They speak every language. If they do think I'm Black, they usually think I'm Eritrean or from another country. Therefore, I'm an immigrant and I don't know the Black experience. So I've gotten from Black people that I'm not actually Black, and from Africans, I'm not African, and from white people, I'm definitely not white. So I have this component of I truly sat in my Black identity when I became a Black mother and experienced birth trauma. Experienced a lot of healthcare conflict throughout my pregnancy, had to fight for things that I shouldn't have to fight for. And I think a lot of it was because of my status as a Black woman. Once I had this little Black boy that was in the world existing with me, and I was holding his hand, and he's a large Black boy. He's 7 and he's over 100 pounds. And his dad is also big, and I knew that when I had a boy and he came out a big boy, that I was going to have some issues. And I witnessed that. I witnessed that as a mother. I'm trying to go to swim dates with my little Black boys, and all the mothers ostracizing me here in Pasadena. You know, the more and more experiences I had through my baby, the more of an advocate I became. So now I sit on all these committees address disparity in, you know, Black wellness and infant and maternal mortality in the Black community. I'm also the co-chair of the Black and African Heritage for DMH, the Underserved Communities Committee, because I was going to meetings and I was not hearing these issues being addressed. So I decided that, you know what, if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to protect my baby. So I've become a mama bear. In more news that is happening, the lynchings, the more and more data coming out about COVID-19, the disparities, the inequities, like you can't avoid it. It's like in our face. I feel like every day, every news, I've had to censor myself. I can't be on Facebook and Instagram and read every article and hear about every death and every injustice, because I have to protect myself and breathe through. So the way I get through is just breathing and knowing that I'm doing things to make a difference as a Black person. Thank you for letting me share.
Hey, yes, thank you very much. Well, in the essence of time, we will have to move a little bit. So for my first question, I do want to ask Dr. Ashley, kind of in combination with our last question. In your professional opinion, how should individuals approach difficult discussions around racism in their interpersonal relationships at work, with their children, extended families? Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that, and then how others might be able to broach that type of topic?
Absolutely. I mean, I could probably talk for a few days on this. But I think first and foremost, the conversations have to happen. I think that for many of us, there is this dichotomy, this polarization that happens where we feel like we either have to be silent so that we can keep our jobs, or we have to be silent because we're going to cause more trouble, or we have to be silent because we're going to rock the boat and on the back end have more emotional labor, because if we tell somebody what's going on or we talk about what's going on, we're going to have to take care of them, or we're going to have to clean it up, or we're going to have to educate them. Like, there's way too much work involved to even starting that process. I think that works for a lot of people until it doesn't. The reality is that so many of us are dying at a higher rate because of the consequences of holding all of that stuff in. The other side of that is that we hold it in until we explode, and then it looks like we're angry or we're aggressive. And I just think that, like, the place of empowerment in having these conversations is somewhere between silence and we got to be able to use our voices in a way that works for us. And so when it comes to dialogue, having these uncomfortable conversations, I think how we do it depends on who we're talking to, right? White folks, there are a lot of things that they need to know. I don't know about you, but everyone I know of color has gotten 75,000 emails or texts from the white people that they know, like, are you okay? Are you all right? Love you, appreciate you, do your own work, right? Step back and let folks who haven't had a voice have a voice. I think the other part of this, though, is that there's an accountability for white people. That if you want to be an ally, if you really want to be supportive, let us tell you where your place is, okay? Don't start asking if we're okay. Don't start stepping into spaces. Be curious. Be curious about our lived experiences, because there is no book that will tell you what it's like to live as a person of color, right? There's none of that. I think when it comes to people of color, I think that we have to be aware of what we do to take care of other people. We have to know that when white people start crying, what do? Do we take care of them? Do we educate them? Do we silence ourselves? Like, what are our responses? And that we have to be careful not to shut ourselves down so that we can get through these conversations. They got to happen with our families. They got to happen with our children. I don't know about you, but my son is 14. When he was 10, I had the conversation with him about what to happen if the police got involved, no matter if he did something or not, right? I'm aware, I looked at the Breonna Taylor stuff. I looked at the Sandra Bland stuff. I'm aware that it's not just men, that I got to prepare my daughter for this as well. So these conversations have to happen everywhere. And what Dr. Lipscomb said a few minutes ago about how tiring this stuff is, this is where it comes from. So in the middle of having these conversations, we also have to take a step back and take care of ourselves, or we're going to burn ourselves out.
Thank you. Going off of that, what we were just talking about, like facilitating conversations, in that same vein, I'd like to ask Mr. Theo Henderson, like, as someone who is incredibly in touch with their community and the Los Angeles community, what kinds of conversations are you guys having? Like, what's some feedback of some of the biggest issues in regards to the social unrest that's going on right now?
Thank you for the question. Hopefully I won't get cut off again. We are having conversations about it. And again, what I was talking about earlier before I got cut off is the fact that George Floyd was not the first Black person that had a knee on his neck. It was an unhoused Black man that had a mental episode. And then so we have like a supportive and as well as a plea or interest in being included in the conversation. I spoke at a rally in Echo Park called Black Unhoused Lives Matter, like Charlie Africa, how he was going through an episode and he ended up dead because they claimed that he grabbed the police officer's gun and things like that. So these conversations, particularly with Black men that are unhoused, we want a time to have our voice into it, and not also Black women that are unhoused, as well as the Black women activists, which I wanted to point out too, because the first persons that I usually see that are usually being attacked by these lot of the unrest now too are the Black women activists. There seems to be a focus on that, and I think it needs to be addressed and talked about. How can we support the Black women that are being that are speaking for sometimes for the Black men as well as Black women? We need to also have a conversation on how we can support them as well.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now go to Dr. Lipscomb. I know we were just talking about Black women, but there is a lot of talk as well as some of the trauma that Black men face. I'm curious, how are these videos of Black men, Black people really being targeted and attacked by the police? How does that sort of worsen a Black person's trauma and mental well-being? Can you speak a little on that?
Sure. One of the things that I found in my research and also in my clinical work with Black men is that it has a psychological wounding that it does each time you see or hear about or read about Black folk being murdered and dying. So I always say a piece of me dies. A piece of us dies inside when we hear or watch or read about it. And I think this goes back to the coping piece, how much we can actually take in before it psychologically impacts us. So what we see PTSD being developed, and secondarily, right, just by reading, hearing about it. So when Miss Nakeya Fields was talking about how she focuses on her breathing and have to, turn off the news and stuff like that, that becomes important. One of the things I've found specifically with Black male grief research that I do is there are some unique reactions, if you will, some responses, if you will, among Black men when they experience traumatic losses like this, like we've been seeing. The first one is withdrawal. So pulling back, isolating, avoiding oneself from situations. The other one is hypervigilance. That's a direct response to post-traumatic stress and needing to scan and be on guard. The other one is honor, pride, and respect for the person who has died. So we see a lot of rallying and supporting and coming out to support and honor and respect. And we saw that also with Kobe Bryant's death earlier this year, and Nipsey Hussle last year, so on and so forth. The other one is acceptance, be it forced to accept it because it's like, damn, I can't even do anything, right? Or activism. And, we see a lot of this now with the response to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And then the final one is targeted, right? Feeling and believing and knowing that you really do have a target on your back. And I love how Theo was talking about intersectionality, because you don't get to be different in Black body, and how Nakeya was talking about her son. Like, there's no space for that, right? You don't get to be differently able like Elijah McClain, right? You don't get to be a Black trans man, right? So we recognize how it impacts, and it does not matter intersectionally who you are seen as a threat. And so that impacts us psychologically speaking.
Thank you. It's very thorough answer. I appreciate that.